when two maintenance workers pulled up to a large gated estate in Santa Fe, New Mexico on the afternoon of February 26, 2025. They expected an ordinary day of routine work. What they discovered instead would shake the entire world, send shockwaves through Hollywood, and spark one of the most unusual and emotionally devastating investigations in recent memory. The front door of the sprawling compound was open. Dogs were wandering loose on the property. And inside, in separate rooms on opposite ends of the house, lay the bodies of two-time Academy Award-winning actor Gene Hackman and his wife, Betsy Arakawa. What authorities found over following weeks inside that mansion was not what anyone imagined, not the dark crime scenes that feared, but something far more heartbreaking, far more intimate, and in many ways, far more haunting. This is the full story of what happened inside Gene Hackman's mansion, and why the details that emerged from the investigation will stay with you long after you finish reading. Gene Hackman, 95, and Betsy Arakawa, 65, were found dead in their home in Santa Fe, New Mexico, on the afternoon of February 26, 2025. Variety, the two people who made the discovery, were maintenance workers who had arrived at the property for scheduled work. One of them was Jesse Kessler, a personal contractor who had worked for the couple for nearly 2 decades. Kessler later said the experience caused him lasting trauma, describing it as brutal and saying that finding two people he'd cared about and worked for over 17 years, and knowing something was desperately wrong for 2 weeks before finally entering and finding them, was something he would never fully recover from. Fox News. The scene that greeted investigators was unlike anything most of them had encountered before. Arakawa was lying on the bathroom floor, and a prescription pill bottle was open on the nearby countertop, with pills scattered around it. Hackman was discovered in the mudroom adjacent to the kitchen, with his cane and sunglasses resting beside him. Variety, both bodies showed unmistakable signs that significant time had passed since they had died. A search warrant affidavit later revealed that Arakawa's body showed decomposition, with bloating on her face and signs of mummification in her hands and feet, and Hackman showed the same patterns of decomposition as his wife. Fox News. One of the couple's 3 dogs was found dead inside a crate. The other 2 were still alive, roaming the grounds. The front door had been left open. Investigators initially described the circumstances as suspicious and launched a full investigation. Detectives noted the situation was suspicious enough in nature to require a thorough search and investigation, though the Santa Fe County Sheriff's Office clarified that foul play was not currently suspected. Variety. Carbon monoxide poisoning was floated early on as a possible explanation, especially by some family members. Gene Hackman's daughter Elizabeth initially suspected that carbon monoxide poisoning might have contributed to their deaths. However, a thorough investigation conducted by the New Mexico Gas Company confirmed there were no significant findings of carbon monoxide or gas on the property. Newsweek, both bodies, also tested negative for carbon monoxide. The front door being open, the roaming dogs, the scattered pills, the signs of advanced decomposition, all of it pointed to something mysterious. But the truth, when it finally emerged, was far more complicated than anyone expected. Before we can fully understand what investigators found, it is important to understand who Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa were in their final years, and what their life inside that Santa Fe compound actually looked like. After retiring from acting in the early 2000s, Hackman had essentially vanished from public life. He and Arakawa had been married since December 1991, and together they built a deeply private existence on a 53-acre estate in a gated community in Santa Fe. The compound, which Hackman purchased in the 1990s, was a 13,000-square-foot gated estate that the couple built up slowly over the years, eventually including a 3-bedroom primary residence, a studio space, a 3-bedroom guest house, a putting green, a lap pool, a hot tub, and dozens of acres of wooded land. DNYUZ, this was not the flashy mansion of a Hollywood star displaying his wealth to the world. This was a retreat, a sanctuary. The couple lived a very private life at the estate, making very few public appearances in the final years of their lives, and residing together on the property for the duration of their marriage. DNYUZ Hackman had once told Architectural Digest that he fell quickly in love with Santa Fe, describing the area as having a kind of magic in it, and that magic, it seemed, was exactly what he and Betsy were protecting. Friends and community members described the Hackmans as beloved in their local neighborhood. One real estate agent noted that you would see them in town, and they were simply not treated as celebrities. Santa Fe embraced them, and they embraced Santa Fe in return. Gene Hackman would visit the local art store for supplies for his painting projects. He and Betsy would attend community events quietly, but the privacy was fierce. One neighbor said that Hackman's wife Betsy grew increasingly protective of him as he aged, and their public appearances became far fewer and further between over time. Fox News. What the world did not know was how much that privacy was concealing. Inside that beautiful, sprawling home, Gene Hackman was fighting a battle with advanced Alzheimer's disease, and Betsy Arakawa had become not just his wife and companion, but his sole caregiver. The main cause of Gene Hackman's death was ultimately confirmed to be heart disease, but he was also in the advanced stages of Alzheimer's disease, and the autopsy revealed he had likely not eaten for a long time before he died. NPR, the revelation that Hackman had been suffering from advanced Alzheimer's was a shock to many who had admired him from afar. But for those close to the couple, it explained the extraordinary lengths to which Betsy Arakawa had gone to protect his dignity and shield him from public scrutiny. Hackman relied entirely on Arakawa as his sole caregiver during his later years. Evidence found throughout the home included her detailed handwritten notes on the timing and dosages of his medications, as well as meticulous records she kept of his medical appointments in her personal calendar. Yahoo, she was not just caring for a husband. She was managing the full-time medical needs of a man whose mind was slowly slipping away, and she was doing it entirely on her own with no professional caregiving support. A dementia expert later commented that it is very common in spousal caregiving relationships for one person to take on the bulk of the responsibility, viewing it as a duty, and strongly recommended that such caregivers seek additional support rather than shouldering the entire burden alone. Irish star in Betsy's case, that support never came. Her dedication to Gene was total and absolute, and in the end, it may have contributed to a situation where neither of them could get help in time. What made the investigation even more devastating was what investigators found scattered around the home that spoke to the tender, daily reality of their life together. Small handwritten notes that Gene had left for Betsy, and that Betsy had left for Gene. These notes became perhaps the most striking and emotionally powerful discovery in the entire case. When Santa Fe authorities released a trove of investigative records in mid-April 2025, among the photographs and documents was something no one expected. A collection of handwritten love notes that Gene and Betsy had left for each other throughout their home, scattered across countertops, taped to walls, and tucked in visible places around the house. The letters were at times humorous, sad, moving, and mundane, offering a rare and intimate glimpse into the private and loving life the couple shared even as Hackman's health declined during his battle with Alzheimer's disease. Yahoo! In one note, Hackman had written to Betsy wishing her a happy birthday, but with characteristic self-deprecating humor, acknowledging that he was writing it several days late. He apologized for having needed her help in preparing her own birthday dinner, thanking her warmly for her assistance anyway. He signed a message with the words, "Love you" and the guys G, a reference to the couple's 3 beloved dogs. DNYUZ in another note. He wrote to her simply and affectionately, addressing her as his lovely girl, and telling her he was thinking of her and the other little guys. But perhaps the most poignant note of all was one in which Hackman gently poked fun at his own failing memory. He wrote that he was heading down to a building past the hot water place, explaining it as somewhere people are supposed to go and do whatever it is people do in such a building, adding humorously that maybe he would remember once he got there. He signed that note with the words, "Love, what's his name?" Yahoo was a joke, a gentle, self-aware joke from a man who knew his mind was disappearing, and who still found a way to make his wife smile about it. Betsy left notes for Gene, too. She wrote reminders, letting him know where she was going and what she was doing. In one note, she told him she was taking their dogs into obedience class and that she had left a jigsaw puzzle on the table for him to enjoy while she was out. Another note taped to the wall read, simply, "Yoga 12:30 p.m. Yahoo! These were not grand romantic gestures. They were the quiet, steady acts of devotion between 2 people who understood each other completely, where love had long since stopped needing to be dramatic to be real. For investigators trained to look for evidence of crime and tragedy, stumbling across these notes must have been a deeply humanizing experience. This was not a household defined by wealth or celebrity. It was a household defined by love, imperfect, tender, aging, and real. While the love notes revealed the emotional truth of the couple's final months, the medical and investigative findings revealed a far more troubling picture of their final days. Investigators determined that Betsy Arakawa most likely died first, on or around February 11, 2025, the last day she was seen publicly in the community. All outgoing communication from her cell phone and email ceased on that date. CNN, the cause of her death was something that stunned everyone, including medical professionals, a rare and potentially fatal illness called hantavirus pulmonary syndrome. Hantavirus is a disease spread through infected rodents, often beginning with symptoms like fatigue, fever, and muscle aches before progressing within days to severe coughing and shortness of breath. Symptoms can take up to 2 months to appear after initial exposure. CNN, it is uncommon, poorly understood by the general public, and easily mistaken in its early stages for flu or a common cold. Records released by authorities showed that in the days before her death, Betsy was actively searching online for information about COVID-19 symptoms, flu-like illness, breathing techniques, dizziness, and nosebleeds. On February 11th, the day she is believed to have died, she sent an email to her massage therapist mentioning that Gene had woken up that morning with flu or cold-like symptoms, that his COVID test had come back negative, and that out of an abundance of caution, she would need to cancel her upcoming appointment and rebook later in the month. NPR, that email was her last known communication with the outside world. A doctor named Josiah Child, who leads a medical clinic in Santa Fe called Cloudberry Health, later told reporters that Betsy had actually called his clinic the following morning, February 12th. He said she had spoken with one of his doctors who had told her to come in that same afternoon, and that an appointment had been made for her. She never showed up. The clinic tried calling her back multiple times, but received no reply. She had tried to get help. She had reached out. She had made the appointment. But by the time the appointment came around, she was already gone. A laptop was found in the hallway adjacent to the bathroom, where Arakawa's body was discovered. Investigators reported that the computer was unlocked and showed that she had been searching Google for breathing techniques, or something similar, shortly before her death. She had also purchased oxygen canisters from Amazon in her final days. Entertainment now. The picture that emerges is devastating. Betsy Arakawa was ill, searching desperately for answers and relief, still managing Gene's medications and care even as her own body was shutting down, and ultimately dying without anyone outside the house knowing what was happening. What happened next is perhaps the most haunting element of the entire story. After Betsy died, Gene Hackman, a 95-year-old man in the advanced stages of Alzheimer's disease, was left alone in that house, and he may not have known his wife had died. Hackman's pacemaker last recorded activity on February 18, 2025, meaning he lived for approximately 1 week after his wife's death before succumbing himself. The chief medical examiner noted that given Hackman's advanced state of Alzheimer's, it was quite possible he was not aware his wife had died. News. Hackman's pacemaker recorded an abnormal heart rhythm, atrial fibrillation, on February 18th, which is the date he is believed to have died. His autopsy revealed severe heart disease, including a history of congestive heart failure, an aortic valve replacement, coronary artery stents, a bypass graft, and a biventricular pacemaker that had been placed in April 2019. NPR's toxicology report showed no alcohol or drugs, but did reveal a low concentration of acetone in his system, a sign that he had not eaten for several days before his death. The sheriff's office found medication for blood pressure and thyroid issues, as well as Tylenol during the search of the home, along with 2 cell phones and a monthly planner. No surveillance cameras were found on the property. What exactly those 7 days looked like for Gene Hackman, alone in that house with his deceased wife somewhere on the other side of the building, is something that cannot be fully known. Given the advanced state of his Alzheimer's, he may have wandered through the house confused, waited for Betsy to come home, or simply continued the small routines of his daily life unaware that everything had changed. The image is unbearable, and it is also a testament to how deeply isolated the couple had become in their final chapter, beloved by their community, protected by their privacy, and ultimately unreachable when it mattered most. As investigators examined the property more closely, additional details emerged that painted a picture of a household where daily life had become increasingly difficult to manage. The home had become dangerously cluttered, with rodent feces found in the garages and sheds on the property, some groceries left moldy on the counters, and signs of ongoing environmental deterioration throughout the outbuildings. An environmental assessment of the Hackman property by state health personnel found rodent feces in several outbuildings, along with live traps on the property, suggesting the couple had been aware of and dealing with a rodent infestation for some time. It is believed that this very infestation is what ultimately led to Betsy Arakawa's exposure to the hantavirus. The fact that rodents have been active on the property for long enough for the couple to have set live traps, and yet professional pest control or medical consultation had not resolved the issue, speaks again to the isolation and the limitations of what one caregiver can manage. Betsy was caring for Gene's Alzheimer's, managing household, scheduling medical appointments, handling every aspect of their shared life, and she was doing all of it alone. One of the couple's dogs, an Australian Kelpie mix named Zinna, was found dead inside a crate. A necropsy confirmed that Zinna had died from dehydration and starvation after being confined. The other two dogs, who were able to roam freely around the property, were found alive and were taken into care. It is believed that Zinna had been placed in the crate shortly before or around the time of Betsy's death and was simply never let out again. Investigators also photographed dozens of agility ribbons displayed throughout the home, one by the couple's dogs, a detail that underscored just how central their animals were to their everyday life and emotional world. Gene Hackman's acting career had been one of the most remarkable in Hollywood history. He was not born into fame or privilege. He was told at his very first acting school, the Pasadena Playhouse, that he had the least chance of success of any student in his class. He proved every single one of those doubters wrong. His breakthrough came with his powerful portrayal of Buck Barrow in Bonnie and Clyde in 1967, a performance that earned him his first Academy Award nomination for Best Supporting Actor. But it was his role as Detective Jimmy Popeye Doyle in The French Connection in 1971 that made him a legend, earning him his first Oscar for Best Actor. He followed it with a string of films that demonstrated a range that few actors in any generation could match. The guilt-ridden surveillance expert in Francis Ford Coppola's A Conversation in 1974, the charismatic and darkly funny Lex Luthor opposite Christopher Reeve in Superman in 1978, the devastating Little Bill Daggett in Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven in 1992, the quirky and unforgettable patriarch in Wes Anderson's The Royal Tenenbaums in 2001, and the menacing coach in Hoosiers. He won his second Oscar for Unforgiven and was praised by critics and peers alike as one of the most technically gifted and emotionally truthful actors who had ever worked in the medium. Clint Eastwood, upon learning of Hackman's death, stated that no actor had been more talented than Gene, and that his performances were always real and powerful. He added that beyond being a colleague, Hackman had been a close friend, and that his loss was deeply personal. In retirement, Hackman did not disappear entirely. He turned to writing, co-authoring historical fiction novels with archaeologist Daniel Lanahan, and writing westerns and crime novels on his own. He told an interviewer that writing offered a different kind of pressure, one he could control, because he was alone with it rather than performing for a crew. He found joy in painting, fishing, riding, and watching budget films with Betsy on Friday evenings. His life in Santa Fe was quiet, intentional, and full. New Mexico's chief medical examiner, Dr. Heather Jarrell, confirmed the causes of the couple's deaths at a March 7th news conference. An unprecedented move, she noted, for the Office of the Medical Investigator to make public statements about an ongoing death investigation. The release was driven by the extraordinary level of public interest and the volume of unanswered questions swirling around the case. The Hackman estate attempted to block the release of investigative records, photographs, and body camera footage, citing the family's right to privacy and the potentially disturbing nature of the images collected during the investigation. A New Mexico judge ultimately allowed the release of most records, with the stipulation that no depictions of either body could appear in any video production or photographic release. The body camera footage that was eventually released gave the public a rare and sobering look at the scope of the investigation. Officers moving carefully through the rooms of the house, noting Hackman's art collection still displayed on shelves and walls, counting cash found around the home, and examining prescription medications scattered near where Betsy had fallen. Gene Hackman and Betsy Arakawa were eventually laid to rest in a private memorial held in Santa Fe, attended only by family and close friends. Hackman's 3 children from his first marriage, Christopher, Elizabeth, and Leslie, were among those present. The family had asked for privacy in their grief, and for the most part, the community that had embraced the couple for 3 decades honored that request. By early 2026, the 53-acre Santa Fe estate had been listed for sale at approximately $6.25 million. The listing agents noted they were aware the property's history might deter some prospective buyers, and that they had not added the usual celebrity premium to the asking price for that reason. They also stated they would carefully vet anyone interested in viewing the home in person to ensure the listing was not treated as a site for morbid curiosity. When people first heard that investigators had been stunned by what they found inside Gene Hackman's mansion, the imagination naturally jumped to dark places. Crime, secrets,